Harihi Om Ganana Tva Ganapati Gunhavamahe Kavyo Kavenamugamashravastamo Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatha Anashrinvalo Devisida Sadhanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Virvajinevati Dhinama Mitrayavato Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Ramanuja Daya Patra Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimad Venkaranatthayam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Sadashiva Samaramba Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Narayanarphanamastu Sadguru Charanavindabhyam Namo Namaha Harihi Om Sai Ram Namo Namaha Suswagatam. Welcome to week 10, the last pit stop before we end the wonderful journey that began 10 weeks ago under the heading of Bhaja Govindam, right? So we've looked at 28 stanzas of the 31, and today we are moving on to close the book on Bhaja Govindam by looking at verses 29, 30, and 31 and see how they are connected, right, to the two malas before them, the Dwadasa Stotra Manjarika and the Chaturdasa Stotra Manjarika, right? So we'll see how they are connected. So going back in the usual fashion, just for you to listen to those verses, right? Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukkhano Karani, Mudajahi Hidanagamatrishtham, Guru Sat Buddhim Manasi Vitreshnam, Yellabashe Nija Karmopatam, Vittam Tena Vinodaya Chetam, Naristana Bharana Bhivesham, Dristva Magamo Gavesham, Etan Mamsavasadi Vikaram, Anasi Vichintaya Varam Varam, Nalini Dalagata Jalamati Tharalam, Tatvat Jivitamati Saya Chapalam, Vidhi Bhyadi Abhimana Grastam, Lokam Shokam Hatam Chasamastam, Yavad Vitto Parjana Sakta, Stavan Nija Parivaro Rakta, Paschat Jivati Jarjara Dehe, Vartam Kopina Prachati Gehe, Yavad Pavano Nivasati Dehe, Tavat Prachati Kushalam Gehe, Gatavati Vayau Deha Paye, Bharya Vipyati Tasmin Kaye, Palastavat Krida Sakta, Tarunastavat Taruni Sakta, Vridhastavat Chilta Sakta, Parame Brahmane Kopina Sakta, Kate Kanta Kaste Putra, Samsaro Yamativa Vichitra, Kasyatvam Kakutahayahate, Tatvam Chintayatadita Brahate, Satsangatve Nitsangatvam, Nitsangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatvam Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatvam Jivan Mukti, Vayasi Gathe Ka Kama Vikara, शुष्के नीरे का कसारा शिने वित्ते का परिवारा ज्ञान तत्वे का संसारा मा कुरुदन जन यौवन गर्वं हरति निमेषात् कालत् सर्वं माया मायामिदमखिलं हृत्वा ब्रह्मपदं त्वं प्रविश विदित्वा धिनयामिन्यौ सायं प्राथ शिशिरवसन्तौ पुनरायाथ कालक्रीडति गच्छत् वायु तदपि न मुञ्चत् आशावायु काते कान्तादनगत चिन्ता वतुला किं तव नास्ति नियन्ता त्रिजति सज्जन संगति रेखा भवति भवर नवतरणे नौका जतिलो मुंडी लुंचित केशा काशायाम्भर भौकृत वेशा पश्यानापि च न पश्यति मूढो हृदय नमित्तं बहुकृत वेशा अंगं गलितं पलितं मूढं दशन विहीनं जातं तुंडं वृद्धो याति कृत्वा दण्डं तदपि न मुञ्चत् आशापिण्डम् अग्रे वाणी पृष्ठे भानु रात्रौ चुबुक्कसमपि तज्जानु करतल भीक्षस्तरुतल वासा तदपि न मुञ्चत् आशा भाषा कुरुते गंगा सागर गमनं व्रत परिपालन माधवधानं ज्ञान विहीना सर्वमतेन मुक्तिं न भजति जन्म सतेन सुरमंदिर तरुमूल निवास सह्या भूतलमजिनं निवास सर्व परिग्रह भोग त्यागा कस्य सुखं न करोति विरागा योगरतो वा भोगरतो वा संगरतो वा संगविहीना यस्य ब्राह्मणिरमते चित्तं नंदति 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 एव भगवद्गीता किंचिदधीता गंगाजल लवकणिका पीता शक्रदपि येन मुरारि समर्चा क्रियते तस्य यमेन न चर्चा पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि मरणं पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनम् इह संसारे बहुदुस्तारे कृपया पारे पाहि मुरारे रात्यचर्पत वितचितकान्ता पुण्या पुण्य विवर्जित पंता योगी योगनि योगी च चित्तो रमते बालो मातव देवा कस्त्वं कोऽहं कुतः याहत कामे जननी को मे तातः इति परिभाव्य सर्वम् असारं विश्यं त्यक्ता स्वप्न विचारम् त्वयि चिन्यात्रैको विष्णु व्यर्थं कुप्यसि मय्य सहिष्णु भव समचित्ता सर्वत्र त्वं वाञ्छस्य चरदि विष्णु तत्त्वं शत्रौ मित्रे पुत्रे बन्धौ मा कुरु यत्नं विग्रहसन्धौ सर्वस्मिन्नपि पश्यात्मानं सर्वत्रोत्सृज वेदज्ञानं कामं क्रोधं लोभं मोहं त्यक्त्वात्मानं भवाय कोऽहम् आत्मज्ञानविहीना मूढा ते पच्यन्ते नरकनिगूढा गेयं गीता नाम सहस्रम् देयं श्रीपतिरूपमजस्रं ज्ञेयं सज्जन संगे चित्तं देयं दीनजनाचय वेत्तं सुकथा क्रियते रामा भोगा पश्चात्तन्ता शरीरे रोगा Yatyapi loke maranam sharanam tadapi na munchatma pacharanam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhajamudamati. Don't look for things that are impermanent, for they never will come to your rescue when that hour of need appears before you on that day of judgment. Seek instead the permanent, the real, that one truth, Ek Omkar. That is what will save you towards the end. So from verse 28, Sankara brings us beautifully into verse 29 by talking to us about what we currently need in this world and what we currently want in this world. Remember, need versus want. So he says, Artham Manartham Bhavaya Nityam Nasti Tata Sukalesha Satyam Putradapi Dhana Bhajam Bhitihi Sarvatrasya Vihitarihiti. He's saying, Arthamanartham Bhavaya Nityam Nasti Tata Sukhalesha Satyam Putradapi Dhana Bhajam Bhitihi Sarvam Traisya Vihitariti. Wealth, Artham. Anartham Bhavaya Nityam. It is not permanent. It will not give you the permanent bliss or happiness or joy that you seek. That's why the second line says, Nasti Tata Sukha Lesha Satyam. That is the truth. Right? And he says, Putradapi Dhana Bhajam Bhiti. Those who have wealth even fear their own children, their own family, because they fear they'll lose their wealth. And then he beautifully sums it up by saying, Sarva Traisya Vihitaritihi. This is verily the truth that one must realize. So, what is the conduct that is expected of us? So, this verse, I think we can attach the right conduct value, right? And of course, from right conduct, if practiced properly, we will get links into contentment, detachment, peace of mind, all of that. So that's what we're looking at. See, he's telling us, Acharya, right, in his great wisdom, he's telling us, he's actually warning us. Warning us of what? Warning us of the folly of material pursuits. He says wealth is disastrous, artham anartham, right? It does not mean there is a problem. See, what he does mean and what he does not mean are two things which is fundamental for your understanding, right? Artham anartham bhavaya nityam, right? But the truth is, what he's saying is, it is not a problem to possess wealth. It is not a problem to enjoy the wealth. Of course, part of enjoyment is giving it to others. That's a separate thing, right? But what he's saying is, it is the unbridled desire for wealth and the attachment to that wealth which is disastrous. And this is what he's trying to bring across to us. The unbridled desire for wealth. Desire grows. You see, an exaggerated value for wealth it brings with it a great deal of suffering. Mental suffering, physical suffering, and of course, emotional suffering as well. So at all levels, right? Consciously, if you are attached, subconsciously, it will affect. Subconsciously, if it is affected, it will never link with the superconscious, right? So, you look at others, what they have, you are full of envy. That creates, some sentiments, some emotions, some feelings, and that grows, and you can't control that, and that grows to hatred, So these things, little, right? Wealth is a blessing only to those who have cultivated higher values and who are using the wealth. Wealth cannot be kept in your pocket or in your account in the bank. It has to be used for the welfare of society, used for the benefit of mankind. Then that wealth will grow. If you try and keep it, and you see it's a problem, right? So the wealth which was meant to lend comfort cannot be so focused that it becomes, what I said earlier, the unbridled desire. Then it becomes the very source of agony and misery, right? So Shankara is imploring you to reflect on the nature of wealth in a broader sense, the material world, right? He says material objects can only help you to procure other material objects. Money can only lend itself to other things which has monetary value. Can it buy something that does not have monetary value? No. You see, This is what Shankara says, right? Iron and gold can only buy iron and gold in different forms. It cannot buy anything else. They cannot. Wealth, possession of great wealth, cannot give you or take you to the higher, subtler, lasting experience of happiness that you are all seeking. So, plus you must understand the Satyam, the truth is, wealth only comes to you in order to go. That is its very nature. That's the character of the beast, right? If you're desperately seeking it or you're desperately attached to it, then you are bound to be affected by the fluctuations of your fortunes. The key, Shankara says, is to remain mentally detached from wealth while possessing it or even enjoying it, right? The key is to remain mentally detached from the wealth, even though you may be in possession of it, or even you're enjoying it. Doesn't matter, but mentally you're detached. Right? See the third line, what he says, Putradapi dhana bhajariti. Those who have wealth even fear their children. You know why? Because they think it's going to be lost. It's going to be stolen. Someone is going to take it away, right? Family, friends, relatives, all this. You know how many problems you've heard from your friends or even in your own family circles. Right? All the issues relating to wealth, right? So great is the attachment that it creates even fear of your own kith and kin. Mental detachment, right? This is the nature of wealth. This is artham, anartham. There's no value. Once you go beyond, you look for the, right? It is flippant and temporary. That's all it is. So you have to look at what is not temporary, what is permanent, right? Possess it, enjoy it, but don't go attached to it. That is what he's saying, Let it not become the be all and end all of your life by possession of material wealth, right? The happiness you want does not depend on your bank balance. The happiness you want depends on your state of mind, right? If your state of mind is full of that material attachment, then that's the consequences which you will suffer, If it is only joy, bliss, help, serve, all those kind of things, then that is the consequences that you'll also enjoy, right? What you enjoy can be classed into a good experience or bad experience. I mean, that is the karmic consequence. So let me tell you about a story about the cobbler and the rich man. This rich man always travels by train, after a long journey, he gets off at his stop. When he comes out of the station, he used to see a cobbler, a cobbler who's working very hard. Every day he comes, he sees, for years he's been seeing this guy. And every day he works hard. So one day he started to talk to him. So he found out that he's married, he's got 3 children, some of them are in school, one was in college. But he's working very hard. So the man asked, how come, can you manage with all this? Yeah, with whatever God gives, we are managing, but we are a happy family. So the rich man felt very bad for this poor cobbler. One day he brought with him 10,000 rupees and he gave it to him. He said, look, here's just a little help. It's not a loan or anything. It's just to give you to ease your, pain, or your material pain. The man said, no, sir, I don't have material pain. I have problems, my life is challenging, but, chalte hai, we are going. It's not an issue at all. But the man was insistent, the rich man said, no, it's okay, take it, use it, I don't want it back. I just feel like giving it to you, right? So the man took it. Now, all this time, there was no issues. The man was happy, he worked hard, he goes back, he has his meal, he spends time with the family, everything. That day when he went back with the 10,000 rupees cash, I mean, that's a lot of money for a cobbler, right? He only sees 200 or 300 rupees a day, not much, right? If he's lucky, he'll make 1,000 or 2,000 in a month. So 10,000 is like a year's earning for him. So he wanted to know where to keep it. Now, it was a small house with one cupboard and everybody's clothes was in there. So he knows that's not a place to keep. There's no place in the house. So he went behind the house, he dug a small hole and he kept the money in there. And of course, he put a pot or plant there so he knows which one is it exactly, right? Now, that night, he couldn't sleep, right? Once he got up to go and check whether, any animal had come to move the plant or whatever, And then next day he was at work. He couldn't focus on his job because he was only thinking about that money, right? Whether it is safe, what if his wife finds it or his son finds it, young fella is going to college, he may not use it in the right means. So he had to go home, and his wife was surprised. She said, "Why are you home? You never come until sunset." He said, "No, I forgot one of my tools." He said, "You never bring your tools back." He said, no, yesterday I brought something, so I'm going to take it." So he took an implement, and then he went behind just to check if it is there. You know how he checked? He to move the plant, he dug the hole, and oh, money is still there. Okay, put it back, and then he went back. Right? Now this happened for a few days. The cobbler, after a week, took the money, waited for the man. When he came, he said, "Sahab, here's your money. I had no money before you gave me this, but I had complete peace of mind and had a very restful life. But the day you gave me this, I lost my sleep, I lost my peace of mind, and I only grew anxious about what is happening to this money. What is happening to this money? Where is this money? Is it safe? Is it this? Is it that? Is it that?" Chinta yukta, I became one who was constantly worried and anxious. So please take it back, and I'm going to get my peace of mind. That night he slept, everything was back to normal. So what is the learning here for us? The learning here is money does not necessarily bring happiness. See, this is a fact that a lot of people don't realize. Everybody is thinking, in fact, some of them that I speak to, right, whatever, in different capacities, say, "Doctor, once I get the money, right, everything will be fine." I'm thinking, what a fool, right? You should read Bhaja Govindam, right? So money does not necessarily, my dear friends, bring happiness. It's difficult to earn money, but even more difficult to safeguard it. It brings fear. It brings anxiety, because you feel not just the moral obligation, the legal obligation to safeguard that wealth. That's why Shankara is saying, "Artham anartham." There's no value. The money which should bring happiness brings restlessness, brings fear, brings anxiety. But this does not mean money is not good, you see. This is why I said earlier, the difference between needs and wants. It is good for you to have money because you need it for your needs. You need a little bit of comfort in your life. That's all fine. But you need a lot of it to help others. Dhana, right? Otherwise, it is going to give you problems, right? So I'm going to ask you to try this at home to see, what you feel. So take some money or, some gold, whatever you have, don't tell anybody about it, right? Whatever money you take, 1,000 or 2,000 pounds or whatever the case is, right? Now keep it in your house somewhere, you know where you kept it, right? Of course, where you think you'll be safe, right? For 1 week. In this 1 week, follow your thoughts. Follow your mental journey. How many times in a day does your mind travel back to the source where you put the money? How many times in a day were you anxiously thinking, is it safe? Did someone discover it? Could someone discover it? Would someone discover it? Should someone discover it? All these thoughts for 1 week. You can't do it for 1 week, do it for 3 days, right? Doesn't matter. The longer, the better, because then that tells you, your mental trait. How many times did you check it was there? How many times did you physically check it was there? How many times were you disturbed by your own thought processes, whether it was safe or whether it was discoverable or in fact discovered, Now, after a few days, you take the money or jewelry and go and put it in the bank or wherever you keep it. Now, follow your same thought process. Now you follow the same thought process. What is happening? Were you as worried? Were you as concerned? Were you as anxious? Was your mind at peace or was it more disturbed? See the difference. When you see the difference, you will remember my cobbler story. What kind of life he had, and suddenly he came across this 10,000. By the way, I have to tell you this, right? Because we're talking about the subject of money. The National Lottery in the UK, right? They commissioned the Department of Social Studies from the, the universities I work at, London School of Economics, their Department of Social Studies, they commissioned a study to see how people who have come across this sudden richness, right, sudden lottery, windfall, as they say, how changed their lives. Now, this study took about 4 to 5 months to produce. And I'm just telling you the crux of the study, right? 82% of people who came by money suddenly, right, had their lives completely changed, right? From a negative perspective. Of course, some people, and they improve their life. But some people, because suddenly they have so much money, they don't know how to use it, they don't know what to do with it, so they go into all kinds of problems, right? 42% of marriages ended in divorce. Right? If you look at the statistics, it's amazing. And when I read that report as part of my, one of my teaching tools, I was only thinking of this. I said, Artham Anartham, look, when did Shankara say this? And we are in 2018, it was 2018, right? 82% of lives have been destroyed by the sudden windfall that they have come into. Money is given to you for a reason, If you don't use it for the right reason, you'll have a problem, right? Simple as that. So what is the conduct? Earlier I said, when I started this verse, I said, the thing is the right conduct, isn't it? What is the right conduct we should have? We should have the value of detachment. Whatever is given to us, we use it, right, in our daily lives, but it should be used to benefit others. So I'll tell you a story about Tulsidas, Saint Tulsidas, and his relationship with the thief. Tulsidas, most of you would know, is a pious saint, right? He worships God in the form of Rama. He was a great Rama devotee. Tulsidas' poems on Rama, the great prophet, right? Wealthy devotees of Rama, who were keen followers of Tulsidas, gave him a lot of, money, utensils, and gold things, and all of that. Of course, he used all of that for the service and whatnot. He never kept any for himself. But he had a problem with all the gold utensils that were given to him and to be used in temple ceremonies and whatnot. So he kept them in the mandir where he also lived behind. And of course, he never had that issue before, but now he's keeping all these gold things. He's always thinking, what is going to happen? I'm supposed to be looking after these, my dharma. I'm a dharmakartha, right? I'm supposed to be looking after this. What if they get stolen? Will I be blamed? So his thoughts started to change. The moment he realized his thoughts process was slightly changing, he then meditated and prayed to Rama and say, you come and stand guard. Now I've handed it over to you. It's not my problem anymore, right? One day a thief came to steal at night, right? Who should he see guarding those things? It was Rama himself, right? When you see Rama, personality, you will know it is Rama. So the next day he came back, he said, Swamiji, I came yesterday, but he didn't say he came as a thief. He said, I came as a devotee to pray in the evening when you had gone out, for Bhiksha. I came to pray, but, there was a guard. He looked like Lord Rama. So I couldn't go in and pray. Tulsidas said, okay, don't worry, I will sort it out. So that day he prayed and he said, Rama, don't stop people from coming to pray. At the same time, I don't want to be, responsible for these gold utensils. Try and get rid of them. So the next day the fellow came just to check, right, the thief. Nobody was there. So he planned, okay, tonight we'll come and do it. Okay. So that night he came, he brought 2 sacks, he put half the load in one, all the gold utensils. The other half, as he was loading, the dog started to bark very loudly and he got scared. So he took the 1 sack and he started to run. So the dog was chasing him, right? Now Tulsidas heard all this commotion. He went into the kitchen where, these golden utensils are kept. He saw there was 1 sack and, half the things were gone. There were a few other things in there. So he quickly put all the remaining things in the sack, took the sack, and he ran after the dog and the thief, right? Soon enough, you see, his conviction was so great, he caught up with the thief. In fact, he overtook the thief, waited for him, stopped him, and the thief thought, oh my God, okay, I'm caught, I'm done. So he fell at the feet and he said, no, Swamiji, please forgive me. I shouldn't have done this, but, I'm sorry. So when Tulsidas saw him falling, he said, no, my friend, I think you left some of these behind. So I have put them in the sack that you brought, and I'm giving you that. May this give you happiness. Go. The thief was so taken by the attitude of detachment of Tulsidas towards the gold or the material that he took, that he stole, that he said, no, Swamiji, you have changed my you've changed my perception of life completely. Please allow me to stay and become your Shishya and serve you. And Tulsidas said, okay, that's what is meant to happen. That's what is happening. That's what will happen, Yad bhavam tato karma, yad karma tato kriyaha, yad kriyaha tato vak. Right? So, what is the learning for us here? The moment you are attached, fear comes, anxiety comes, restless comes, worry comes. The moment you're detached, you can give. The same thing which was a problem is now a gift. So convert it. Become the giver, right? See, the above story illustrates that love for God must be numero uno, the first thing, right? First among equals. First, then only other things, right? So you detach yourself from other things, but attach yourself to that thought, that one truth. Then you will have no problem. Then you are not attaching yourself to the temporary. You are realizing the truth, the true nature of all the wealth. And you are attaching yourself to the imperishable, ever new, everlasting, ever increasing joy of God. And that's what we all need to do, right? Now, just like I said earlier, right, these verses were compiled when? 12 to 1500 years ago, right? But they sound so modern and are so relevant even today. It just goes to show you that all of this existed even then. Times have changed. I think in week 3 or week 4, I was talking about the different yugas, Sathya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga. The same concept, but it's just taking shape in a different way. Of course, now it's more prominent, it's more pronounced, it's more potent, right? That is Kali Yuga, age of destruction. Definitely, adharma will increase. But even then, we have been given that assurance, isn't it? Yatha yathai dharmasya glahinit bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tathatmanam sajamyaham paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya chatuskrutham dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So, we shouldn't be worried, we should always contemplate. That's why he says, artham anartham bhavaya nityam. Always think about that. Think about the true value of this money, right? People sometimes will only respect you. When you walk into a shop, you think the shopkeeper respects you because you are Vignesh or because you are Professor Vignesh or you're Dr. Vignesh or something. No, he knows I'm going to give him some money. So for that money, he gives me a pleasant greeting. Welcome, sir. What can I, sir? What can I do for you, sir? How can I help you, sir? Once that money is imparted and you take your goods or the services, that's it. You are no longer relevant. That's the value. That's the truth that Shankara wants us to see. There's no value. That's why he says artham anartham. Right? Remember, I spoke at one point about the 4 purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma, artha. Artha is what he's talking about. Artham anartham. But whatever you get, that artham must be through dharmic ways, dharmic methods, right? Dharma, artha. Kama, moksha. So dharma is connected to artha, kama is connected to moksha. Kama is desire or lust, and moksha is, liberation. So whatever wealth you get, you must procure it through dharmic means. In order to get moksha, you must detach yourself from kama. So that's why dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the 4 purusharthas, right? Okay. So we must always be the master of money. Once we let money become our master, then we have a problem, right? And we don't waste or squander money away. It must be used for its purpose. Then it will grow. If it is used uselessly or without the thought, without thinking, then it will leave us. Like what Buddha said. Buddha beautifully said, money is the worst discovery of human life, Buddha says. But, he goes on, it is the most trusted material to test human nature. Oh, what fantastic thought process. Money is the worst discovery of human life, but it is the most trusted material to test human nature. And he says money is numbers, and numbers never end. It grows and grows and grows and grows. If it takes money for you to be happy, then your search for happiness will never end, just like the numbers. Maharishi, Ramana Maharishi. We are so engrossed with the objects or appearances revealed by the light that we pay no attention to the light. We are so engrossed, or the light shining, we are looking at all the things, but we don't focus on that light itself. So we don't look at the source, but we look at the consequences, right? See, consider the trees. You know, this is a Zen philosopher, Confucianism, right? He says, consider the trees, which allow the birds to perch on it and fly away without either inviting them to stay or desiring them never to depart. Be like the tree. If your heart can be like this, then you will be near to God. Confucius, right? So remember, that's 29, right? Then, of course, he brings us into 30. Pranayamam pratyaharam nitya nitya viveka vicharam japya sameda samadhi vidhanam kurva vadanam hada vadanam, he says. Pranayamam pratyaharam nitya nitya viveka vicharam japya sameda samadhi vicharam kurva vadanam mahada vadanam. What does this mean? He says, remain. So, bringing on from 29 into 30, he says, regulate your life forces properly. Focus on your breathing. Remain unaffected by all these external influences and learn to discriminate slowly, surely, but gradually the difference between the real and the fleeting. Because the real was Rama, the fleeting was the golden deer. What always attracts? The fleeting. Even to Sita, because that was the karma. She had to go through the karma. Rama had to go through his karma. Lakshmana had to go through his karma. Right? The moment you take a birth of a human being, Narajanmaha, you know, you have to go through the process. There's no escape. Right? Just like, you know, the car in an assembly point, before it is approved, it has to go through all the processes, and then it has to go through the QC, the quality control. Likewise, we are going through this samsara, this ocean of life, is that assembly point, where we are being assembled, and then see, finally, whether we pass the QC. Then, no more punarjanmaha, no more rebirth. Right? He says, Japya Samedha Samadhi Vidhanam, chant the holy name of God and silence the turbulent mind. So, if you ask me, how can we deal with the mind? There you go, Namasmarana, Namasmaranam. You know, perform Purvavadanam, perform this with care, Mahadavadanam, with extreme care. Fantastic. So, the value here is peace. Earlier, right conduct, this is peace. So, right conduct will lead to peace. Very simple explanation, right? That's why he's saying, see, in this verse, what he's telling us is withdraw our mind from this preoccupation with artha, with kama, when only dharma and moksha will remain. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha, isn't it? If you take away artha, if you take away kama, what remains? Dharma and moksha. So the path to moksha is through right conduct. That is not affected by artha. That is completely right, obvious, inobvious to karma, right? So how do we do it? First step is practice discipline, right? Having a sense of proportion, discrimination, viveka, right, in our activities through self-control. Simple thing like eating, you know, how much do you need? How much do you want? In between, there has to be some cutoff point. That is the discipline I'm talking about. No one can come and tell you, because your stomach only you know, isn't it? Right? People can judge on the basis of the portions you're having, but only you know the extent of your hunger, right? So self-control, discipline is what I'm talking about. Learn to breathe. You know, if you breathe properly, your hunger also is reduced, right? If you learn to breathe properly, even your hunger gets reduced. Because we are not doing it properly, we get hungry. Right? This is to do with pranayama, breathing, right? Once you self-discipline and self-regulate, you know, have a sense of proportion in all the activities that you're doing, then the second thing is withdrawing the mind. So, you know, remember the two khandas I said to you before, karma kanda, jnana kanda. Do, control, and then deal with the mind. Because the mind otherwise will fool you, right? It is a great master, but it is a refusing servant unless you trick it using its own tricks, right? There must be a sense of proportion in whatever we do. Ahara, which is food. Vihara, which is walking. Swahara, which is breathing, right? Everything must have a sense of proportion. What we do, what we, what we think, what we say, everything. Right? Swami says, sometimes you speak 2 words is too much. Right? In one of these discourses, he said, sometimes you speak 1 word is not enough. Then one stood up, Swami, so how? You speak 1.5. Right? So control, control, right? So let your mind become the inquiring tool with which you think, with which you contemplate, with which you do not take things for granted. Simple, right? By practicing sense control, it's possible to understand the difference between permanent and impermanent. Permanent and impermanent. Is life permanent? No. Once you know it is no longer permanent, then you'll do the right thing. Study of Vedanta, study of literature, everything. He says this in his 9-point code of conduct, isn't it? Right? Regular reading of Sai literature. So if you want to squeeze the entire essence of Bhagavad Gita or the entire essence of Bhaja Govindam, the 9-point code of conduct is enough. If you want a simple way to look at it, right? So how to get this peace and how to control the mind is something called perseverance, right? The character of perseverance. So here I have to tell you the story of the saint, right? He's Narayana Rishi. His name is Narayana Rishi. Very famous. And he was traveling once in his travels. He was traveling through Gujarat, this one. He was going through Gujarat. And he, although he comes from Uttar Pradesh, yeah? He is from Uttar Pradesh, but he was, these saints, they go around talking and preaching. So they're kind of a Bodha Guru. Some are Veda Gurus, some are Bodha Gurus, right? Anyway, so he was going around. He came to this village in Surat, right? And he saw a lot of people gathering amidst the cow. So when they saw him, they did pranams and everything. And of course, some knew him, the great Narayana Rishi has come. So he observed that the villagers were struggling with the cow. So he asked them, what is the problem here? So they said, Swamiji, we have been trying to milk this cow for 2 days now, but it never lets anybody go near it. The moment it senses someone approaching, it kicks with its hind legs. So a few people have got injured. So now we have a problem. We don't know what to do with it. Because it's violent, it's kicking people. And of course, we need the milk. So Swamiji said, okay, go and bring me a 7-foot long stick. So villagers went quickly, brought him a nice round, latti, 7 foot. So he sat 7 feet away from the cow and he took the stick and he went near the cow. Of course, the cow kicked. So he removed the stick. He took the stick again. This went on. Of course, people didn't know what he was doing. Right? He knew very well. Narayana Rishi knew what he was doing. Went on for 12 to 13 hours it went on. Right? At one point, when he put the stick near the cow didn't kick. It remained still. At this point, the Swamiji said, now you go and milk the cow. And they were able to milk the cow. So someone asked him, Swami, why all this? He said, this is absolutely necessary. If you can do this with your cow, can you imagine what you need to do with your mind? He said, apply the same practice to your mind and persevere in that, in that practice. The mind is always turbulent. It kicks back, just like the cow, It has to be treated in the same way like how I treated the cow. You see? Whatever you say, the mind will not agree. The mind instead will tell you something else and will try and influence you to think its way. Quite different, quite detached from what you want to do. Do this, do that, do the other thing. You want to do this? No, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Right? So Swamiji wonderfully, through the 7-foot stick, taught people how to control the mind. You check it always, check it, check it, check it, check it. Remember, I said one way is when you think of something or when your mind is telling you to do something, replace that with a higher ideal and replace that, the higher ideal. So you continuously, you're telling your mind, I will decide, I will decide, I will decide, I will decide. And then the mind at one point becomes no longer a master. So control of mind, control of senses, control of desire is not easy. But with constant practice, you can tame the mind. If you can tame the monkey, you can tame the monkey mind, because they are no different. They are the same, right? And another, because sometimes we are in a situation and we don't think out of the box, This is something called paradigm shift. You need a paradigm shift in the way you perceive things, right? So this is a Sufi saint, right? The great mystic. He was called Jalaluddin, right? In the Middle Ages at some point, right? He had many, many followers. He recited an instance, in his talks of how a person can change himself by changing his circumstances. How can you change your circumstances? By perceiving the same circumstances in a different light. So this, Jalaluddin, great Sufi, had several disciples, and one of them said, I don't understand, how can you do that? So he said, okay, let me tell you a story. So he's told a story of someone in a different village who came to him one morning and said, greetings, great master. So the master said, so how are you doing today? And the man said, oh, sorry, I think I'm living in hell. So the master inquired, what is the trouble? What is the matter? So the man says, I have a very small house. There's only one room. I have my wife there, my two children there, the same place we cook, we sleep. And, I have a camel and a dog. While the camel brays continuously throughout the night, the dog also barks all night. We couldn't sleep. You can imagine our condition. Master, life is verily hell, for me. The master said, oh, don't worry. There is a problem. There is a solution. I can solve this problem very quickly, right? In those days, right, the obedience of disciples to whatever the master says was in a different level. They never questioned, they just did. Today, the master can tell you things, but you will question it. That is today. That's why I said the same problems exist in different light. Those days, no matter how funny, how irrational, how unusual, the devotion and submission to the Guru, completely different. Supersedes rationality. Because now you're thinking, oh, the rational way to approach this is to ask the Guru why, when, how, who, where, what. Those days, no. The moment the Guru says do, it is done, finish, no questions, right? So you enjoy the results. So anyway, the Guru said, I can give you, the master said to this man with the problem, he said, I can help you out, How? You go and bring the dog and tie the dog inside the house. So the man went, he tied the dog. Next day he came to the Guru, he came to the master and he said, so how was your night? Master asked. Master, it was worse. The dog is inside the house and is barking and none of us could sleep and all of that. Oh, I see. The dog did not allow you to sleep. It was continuously barking. Okay. Never mind. I have another solution. Try this. The camel outside? Bring the camel also inside your house and keep it. The man was thinking, what is this? You want me to bring the camel? Well, I'm already having a problem with so much, but he never said anything because submission to the Guru, right? So brought the camel. The camel occupied the entire area. The wife had to stand all night. The man had to stand all night. His two children had a little bit of space. Camel continued to bray all night. Dog continued to bark. The children started to cry. And of course, he was standing and his wife was standing. So you can imagine what a night they would have gone through. Next morning, he went to the Guru and says, Master, I think I'm going to die because for 3 nights, I haven't had any sleep. I was standing all night. My wife was standing. I think we are all going to die because this life is very hell. He said, don't worry. I have another solution for you, right? The man was willing to try anything. He says, okay, master, what should I do? He said, take the camel and tie it outside. Take the dog and tie it outside. So the man went, took the camel, tied it outside, took the dog, put it outside. That night, went through. Next morning, he comes to the master, and the master says, so, how was your night? And the man says, oh my God, master, it was heavenly. Heavenly. What? Heaven? He says, you came to me. Nothing has changed. You came to me the first day, remember? The same situation. Right? Now I put you back in the same situation, and you're telling me the same thing. Hell is now heaven. This is how the mind plays a mystery with you. Right? So there are problems. Everybody has problems. But if you look only at the problems, you will not find the solution. If you look at the solution, the problems will disappear. Right? That's what you're supposed to be thinking. You know? Again, this is attachment to the karma kanda. You cannot exercise jnana kanda. That's the problem. The mind is a great mystery. It's a great mystery. It can deceive you every moment and tell you everything is wrong. Nothing is good anywhere. Nobody is good. Everybody is foolish. The world is a devil's abode, and it's better that you don't live. The mind will tell you all kinds of things. Right? It will go on telling you all kinds of things. Right? Till the last moment of your life. That's why in one earlier verse, Sankara says, Tadapina munchate asha pasha. Still, you know even death is coming. You know you're growing old. Your teeth is falling. Angam palitam galitam hundam. You know. Still that asha pasha, you know, that desire never leaves you. Right? Until the day you breathe your last, you always have desire. So, cull it. Desire your desires. Right? Then you can. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. Right? So, always latch yourself to the eternal truth. Then the control of senses will come. So, once in Mahabharata, right, in the Gurukula of Dronacharya, you know, the great Guru, Dronacharya, who trained both the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Once he was passing by, you know, by the camp, you know, on one side the Pandavas camp, on one side the Kauravas camp. He was passing by, he heard the Pandavas talking, the Pancha Pandavas, you know, the 5 Pandava brothers. They were talking, and of course, he stood by to listen. And what began merely as a, you know, just a normal chat, you know, grew into something which then gave place to arrogance. Right? So he was watching, he was listening. The Pandava brothers were talking and were comparing themselves with the 5 senses. Now they said, oh, we are Pancha Pandavas, we are like, you know, the 5 senses, always connected, always in unity. One cannot work without the other, you know. So Dronacharya went to the camp and says, I happen to hear you saying that you are the 5 senses, right? So he said, let me tell you a story. And this is what Dronacharya told the Pandavas. And he says, before I tell you the story, can you go and call all your Kaurava brothers? So everybody gathered, all the Shishyas gathered, and Dronacharya is telling them the story. He said, once there were 5 senses, right? Your Pancha Indriyas, you know, a sense of hearing, sight, smell, taste, and touch, right? So one day they were sitting around, these 5 fellows were sitting around, and they were talking about all kinds of things. And of course, after some time, you know, the talk, they became somewhat boastful of their abilities and the importance, and they claimed that they were the significant ones. Each was claiming they were the significant rulers of the body. They look at us, you know, we are remarkably special. This is what they're saying. There is no way the body can survive without any one of us. Then, of course, each wanted to outdo the other. Mr. Hearing came and he said, listen. And they filled the space with music that breathed emotion and passion throughout, stirring the soul. Oh. Mr. Sight saw this and says, oh, you think that is good, right? He says, see. And to match the music, he showed them, you know, the breathtaking splendor of swirling magical forms and exquisite shades of colors. Sight. Right? Sir, smell, Mr. Smell, in a puff of breath says, you think that is good? Smell this. Perfumed expands with heavenly aromas. Wow. Mr. Taste thinking, this is nothing, man. This is nothing. Look what I can do. Taste, not to be outdone, it exhaled out a cornucopia of mouth-watering flavors. Wow, fantastic. And Mr. Touch finally came and said, all this is useless if you don't have me, right? With every breath tingling with softness, warmness, coolness, you know. So all five lavished praise for one another, and it was actually quite a show. Now, all this time and all this was happening, prana, you know what is prana, right? Prana is your breath. Prana was quietly watching, you know, going in and out, so hum, right? This awesome spectacle that was happening between the five senses. But prana was simply present. It was just there, right? And then it tried to say something, you know, none of you are actually reigning supremely in this body. But the five senses were not listening. They had no time for this fellow, right? They had no time, nor were they aware that prana was trying to speak to them. They were completely blind. See, desire, thoughts becomes desire, desire becomes attachment, attachment leads to other things, right? So the senses, in their total sense of absorption, self-absorption, had no attention to spare for prana. So prana just left. Prana, angered by this, just left. As prana left, the sounds, the colors, the fragrances, the taste, the physical sensations, the mind all faded and disappeared. The senses ceased to exist without prana. The senses had no idea what had happened, you know. As prana returned, they found themselves to be, you know, going through all those emotions and sensations and feelings. As it left, they were dead. When prana left, the senses were no longer there. The senses suddenly became so vulnerable and scared. At that point, prana said, know your space, know your place. I have to divide myself 5 times and spreading throughout the body in the name of sight, in the name of touch, in the name of taste, in the name of smell, in the name of hearing. This is verily my job. So without me, none of you exists. And you can only do one thing, touch. You can only do one thing, taste. You can only do one thing, smell. You can only do one thing, see. You can only do one thing, hear. But I can change into any one of you as required, as necessary, and give life to this body through the senses. So senses know your place. That is why even, you know, in temples and all that, when they make new temples, they have a ceremony called prana pratishthavanaha. That is giving life to the statue or the murti in the temple. Without that, you know, the statue has no life. Only after the consecration ceremony, the prana pratishthavanaha, then the temple is open to the public and the deity has been given life. Prana is very, very important. That is why the prana that in the story here, that Dronacharya told the Pandavas and the Kauravas to inculcate a sense of an understanding, right, between the senses and the breathing, the life itself, life force. Prana Shakti is life force, right? So prana in this story here is referring to the Mahaprana. Mahapranaya, right? Anyway, and the 5 sub-pranas of prana, apana, samana, udana, and vyana. Right? Only when these 5 are together, then the Brahmana comes. Right? These 5 subcategories of energize various parts of the body and have different functions, right? And that is why this mantra is said whenever prasad is being offered in the temples and the mandirs. You know, they say Om Prana Yaswaha, Apana Yaswaha, Udana Yaswaha, Samana Yaswaha, Vyana Yaswaha, Brahmane Swaha. Because apana is pelvis to navel, prana from heart to throat, Samana from navel to the heart in the midriff, right? Udana is head, arms and legs, and Vyana is throughout the body. So when you're offering this prasad, only for namesake you are having that laddu or keshar or whatever, right? Actually, you're offering your whole self. Om pranaya swaha, my life, my breath. Om apanaya swaha, one part of my body. Om samanaya swaha, another part of my body. Om udanaya swaha, another part of my body. Om vyanaya swaha. And finally, you say Om brahmane swaha. Yeah. I'm giving the Brahma in me to you. In order for you to do that, give yourself to God. How pure must be in your thoughts, in your words, in your actions. Right? Now, I want you to think about this. This story, when I was telling you, did you feel or experience something, perhaps the unthinking part in us, right? Sometimes we do things so instinctively, isn't it? What do you do when you smell something really bad? What do? You hold your breath. The moment you hold your breath, you don't get that smell anymore. Isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, you see? When something tastes horrible, what do? You hold your breath. No breath, no taste. No breath, no taste, no breath. And you close your eyes. You stop breathing, you close your eyes. Same effect, right? You don't see anymore. Right? Like that, the senses and the mind are born from prana. Senses and the mind are born from prana. They are, in fact, a manifestation of prana, right? And they return to be absorbed into prana. That's why they say, yat bhavam tat bhavati, yat mano tat manushya. As you think, you become, your thoughts become verily the actions that energize you, and thereby you have the consequences, right? So that is why sleep, sleep is so important. Senses and mind are absorbed into prana every night during the phase of deep sleep. In deep sleep, you lose yourself. So it is very important. Sleep is very important because that's where you R&R, recover, rest and recover, rest and recuperate, So don't deny yourself of sleep, because that is where all your mind, all your senses, you get restless nights and disturbing dreams because the mind and the senses are not at peace. So think carefully next time. That is why pranayama is very important, regulation of breathing. If you ask doctors, they'll tell you breathe something like 28,600 times a day. How many times do you hear yourself breathing? You're aware you're alive. But pranayama, soham. When you breathe in, if you want to know you're breathing correctly, you test this out. When you're breathing in, your stomach must come out. When you're breathing out, your stomach must go in, right? Most people do it the other way around. That means you're not breathing properly, right? Okay. Verse 31. Guru Charanam Bhuja, the last one. This is the, creme de la creme, the golden jewel on the crown, so to speak. Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhakta Samsara Dachirat Bhava Mukta Sendriya Manasa Niyama Devam Drakyashi Nitra Yastam Devam. Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhakta Samsara Dachirat Bhava Mukta Sendriya Manasa Niyama Devam Drakyashi Nitradayashtam Devam. Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhakta. Once you surrender at the holy feet of your Guru, Nirbhara Bhakta, you have no fear. You will be free. Samsarat Achirat Bhava Mukta. He will give you the freedom from this life of samsara. But Sendriya Manasa Niyama Devam, through disciplined senses, right? Sendriya Manasa, bring all the senses together, control the mind through Niyama, means detachment, right? Drakshasi Nijrada Yashtam Devam. Then, once you're at that state, then you will come to experience the indwelling Lord of your heart. So the value here, finally, we come to love, the overpowering value of love. Of course, love itself, you should have three sub-values like faith, compassion, devotion, all those kind of things. So Sankara is saying, you want knowledge, you need a teacher. You want teacher, you have to surrender. No surrender, then it's a problem. That knowledge will come and go through you. It will not go to you, but it will go through you. So if you want the knowledge to stick with you, If you want the knowledge to come to you, you have to surrender to him, right? Devotion to the teacher, right? How many of us are true to our master, true to him? We say, oh, Swami is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, but do we live in the truth? Swami's will, yeah, Swami's will, yeah, Swami's will, yeah. You accept that, then don't question anything that happens in your life. Remember the story I said to you, those days when the Guru says, before he can finish saying, it's already done. Today, so many questions are, why this? Why not like that? Why this? Why not like that? Devotion means two things, 2 R's, reverence and respect, and submission. 2 R's and 2 S. Reverence, respect, 2 S is submission, surrender, right? So that may be the acronym for today, 2 R and 2 S. There must be a willing submission on your part, willing surrender to the teacher, sense of reverence, and implicit trust you must have that he is going to do something, he's going to say something that's going to change it. You need the Guru to explain these things to you. Once you have implicit and faith, he becomes complicit in your life. Once you have implicit faith, he becomes complicit in your life. You need to surrender. The key word here is surrender, right? Now, I will tell you the story about the fish and surrender. So in a pond, in a little river, right, there lived many fish. Every day, they would get up in the morning, but they would be having so much of fear. They would dread the morning because a fisherman comes and he casts the net. And every morning, some fishes will be lost. Without fail, every morning, many fish would get caught. Just like how we are caught sometimes in the ocean of samsara. Some would be taken by surprise. Some would be taken, they were caught napping. Some would not find any place to hide. While some others, even though they know the man is going to throw the net, they go. On the face of lurking danger, they would simply find no means of escape from the deadly net. They just carry on. But among these fishers, all the other fishes noticed there was one fish that was always cheerful every day. Every day it wasn't worried about this fellow, right? It had no fear of the fisherman's net. The happiness is devoid of fear, right? Anyway, it seemed to have mastered the art of being alive and staying alive and evading or avoiding the fisherman's net. So all the other fish, the senior fellows were wondering, what's happening here? Why this fish is, in a state of his own and is not affected by anything. So they went to see him one day and they said, hey, little fish, come here, we want to talk to you. So why do you need to talk to me? I'm only a little fellow, I'm insignificant. He said, no, we want to know how come you're so happy every day and how you've managed to stay alive and avoid the fisherman's net. But every one of us who are bigger and stronger, got more experience, but we seem to be getting caught and many of our friends and brothers have been lost. So tell us, what is your problem? Or what is your secret rather? So the little fish said, actually, it's very simple. When the fisherman comes and throws the net, I swim and I just stay at his feet because that is one place the net will never come to catch. My God, the other fishes were thinking, what great wisdom is this, man? Even if the fisherman comes near him, he will never put the net at his own feet. So I just stay at his feet. All the other fish could only marvel, simply marvel at the simplicity of the little fish's wisdom. Sometimes it is this little wisdom that we need. And that's why Shankara beautifully completes the thing by saying, Guru Charanam Puja Nirbhara Bhakta, because when you go to the feet of the Lord, you have no fear. Just like the Sikh prayer, Nirbhav, Nirvair, Akal Murat, Arjuni Sabhang, Guru Prasad, Jab, Namasmarana. We have been given all these tools, yet we find ourselves lamenting on the same quagmire of this life. When the Supreme decides and does something, just accept that nothing can change that. And that's why Swami himself, when he made that declaration, his first bhajan is already given you the entire secret. The entire secret was given to you on this first bhajan. Manasa bhajare Guru Charanam. Manas, mind. Bhajare, serve. Where? Guru Charanam. Charanam is feet. Sharanam is surrender. Cha and Sa is different. That's why it's very important to say things properly, because if you mispronounce them, then the energy is different. If the energy is different, the message is different. The message is different, the returns are different, right? So we have to be very clear, right? It's not important for you to learn the language in order to say it, but when you're saying it, you have to say it correctly, properly. So Manasa Bhajari Guru Charanam. So what happens when I surrender the mind at the Lord's feet? Dustara Bhava Sagaratam. Then I will become the raft. You sit on the raft and I will take you across this ocean of samsara. Right? I'm going to complete it with the story. The story is called Who You Are Makes a Difference. Who you are makes a difference. And it's a story, right, about this lady who was a teacher, right? And she was a teacher and she just started to teach the 5th grade. The very first day of school she came, to introduce herself, and she gave a little talk to all the students, and she says, I love all of you equally. I love all of you the same. But as she said it, this doubt came and said, is this true? But she says it, this the same thing she says, every year to every class that she takes. So this year was no different. So she says, sometimes you are teachers or you are parents or you are friends, you tell people certain things, isn't it? Because you are so accustomed to saying it, you don't know whether there is any truth in it or not. So this story is very important. Please listen carefully, right? Even SSC teachers, right? You have to be very mindful of what you say to the child. That has to be vested in truth and right conduct. Right? Because then, unless you do that, you cannot expect that from the child. Right? You don't give right conduct, you don't expect right conduct. You don't give truth, you don't expect truth. You don't give peace, you don't expect peace. You don't give love, you don't expect love. Right? Like that. You don't give non-violence, you don't expect non-violence. Only give, then you will receive what you've given. Right? And it is in giving that you receive. Anyway, so there was this boy who sat in the front row, totally slumped in his seat, and his name was Teddy. Right? Now, then she gave the children some work and she was going through the reports of each student. She was particularly interested in this shabby looking, dirty fellow who was sitting right in front and was slumped in the chair like, another day, another teacher, why am I here? That sort of thinking. She could see, she could feel. So she was looking through Teddy's reports. Teddy's 3rd grade teacher, remember he's in 5th grade, right? So 3rd grade teacher wrote, Teddy's mother just died and this has been very hard on him. He tries to do his best, father has left home, no interest in his life. He's on his own and, he's bound to become a failure if, something is not done about it. So this teacher is writing, hopefully someone else will do something about it, right? How many times we have been in a situation where we, put the problem forward without us doing anything about it. Then the 4th grade report she was reading, and the teacher said, Teddy is withdrawn. He doesn't show much interest in class, in school. He has no friends, and he sometimes just sleeps in class. Okay, so this teacher, and her name is Thompson, right? Her name is Mrs. Thompson. She suddenly realized the problem, and something told her that she has to do something for this boy, right? Especially on one day, on Teacher's Day, all the students brought her a lot of gifts, right? Beautifully wrapped, I think it was Christmas or something, Christmas. And, beautiful, bright colored paper, beautiful quality, expensive gifts. Then Teddy comes. His present was clumsily wrapped, in those heavy brown paper that, sometimes you get the grocery store, they give you this brown paper bag and then you put all your things in there and you carry the paper bag. You can see this a lot in American lifestyle, right? So he took the bag, he opened it up and then he put 2 things in there and he wrapped it up and he brought it to her. And amongst all that beautifully wrapped present, sometimes this one stuck out like a sore thumb, So she took Teddy's present, she opened it, and inside, revealed to the class what she saw, because everybody can see she's opening the present. And when the children saw what was inside, they all began to laugh, pointing a finger at Teddy, because what the teacher found in there was a little rhinestone bracelet, with a few stones missing. And there was a bottle of perfume, which only had about, 30% left. Someone had used it. But she was, she stifled the children's laughter when she exclaimed, she took the thing and she said, look at this pretty bracelet that Teddy has given me. And she says, this is a beautiful perfume. It's very nice. And she sprayed some on herself, and she put it down. Then she looked at all the other gifts and all that. And then, the class bell rang and students left for the day. And Teddy was waiting there. This is the crunch, my dear brothers and sisters. Teddy was waiting there and he went to her and he said, Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to smell. And he left. After he left, Mrs. Thompson stayed in class for about 1 hour and she cried continuously. She just cried and cried and cried and cried, right? That day she gave up lecturing to the children. She gave up lecturing on reading, on writing, on arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach. There's a difference between lecturers and teachers. Lecturers lecture. Teachers should teach. There is a clear distinction. Okay. So she took a particular interest in Teddy. She worked with him. She spent time with him. She will stay back after school. The more she encouraged him, the more time she spent with him, the faster he responded. And he was, by the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest kids in the class. Despite her saying to the class every morning, I love you all the same, she knew that was not the truth because Teddy had a special place in her heart. So I want you to reflect for a minute here, how many times we have said things when we don't mean it, right? Then, of course, Teddy graduated from the 5th grade and he went into the 6th grade. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy saying that she was still the best teacher he had ever had in his whole life. Then he left, after the 6th grade, he left, he went to high school and whatnot, She never heard from him. 6 years later, she hears from him. She gets another note to say that he's finished high school. He got 3rd in the entire college. And he closes his letter by saying, teacher, Mrs. Thompson, you are still the best teacher I ever had in my life. Then she never heard anything. And 4 years after that, she hears from him saying that, he's gone through college. He's graduated with honors. He's got a prize, the chairman's prize. And he ends his letter, Mrs. Thompson, you are still the best teacher I ever had in my life. Then 4 more years passed, yet another letter came. The letter was growing. Right. By this time, Mrs. Thompson was also nearing, retirement. He said he'd already got his bachelor's degree and, he ends his letter. Mrs. Thompson, you are still the best teacher I ever had in my life. And he signs off. This time his name is a bit different. He says, Theodore Stullard, MD, qualified as a doctor. She's thinking, wow, what a great journey this fellow has. You see, but the story doesn't end here, A few, just after retirement, she gets another letter from Teddy, nice spring day. And Teddy said in that letter to Mrs. Thompson, he said, Mrs. Thompson, I have met a girl, I proposed to her. She has accepted my proposal. We are going to get married. Unfortunately, my father died a few years ago. And I was just wondering if you would agree to come and sit at the wedding in the place that is usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Mrs. Thompson, of course, she wrote back and she said, yes, Teddy, I will come. And guess what? She wore the bracelet, the one with the stones missing. And she always kept that perfume. She never really used it, right? She just wanted to be reminded of Teddy. But to the wedding, she wore that perfume and took that perfume with her. And of course, on that very bright summer morning, Teddy got married and Mrs. Thompson sat in the place where his mother would have sat, wearing the mother's bracelet and wearing the mother's perfume. They hugged each other and Dr. Teddy whispered, listen to this very carefully. Dr. Teddy whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear. He said, thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so very much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference.
Mrs. Thompson patted Teddy, and with tears in her eyes, here comes the crunch, she whispered back. She said, Teddy, you have it all wrong. You, and only you. It was you. You are the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until the day I met you. Teddy, it is you. And they both cried. So what is the learning for us here? You see, you must understand one thing, right? You can never tell what type of impact you can make on someone else's life by your actions or by your inactions. You know, you can never tell. Please consider this fact as you go through life, as you venture in the adventure of this life, you know, just try to make a difference in someone else's life today. When you believe in angels, angels are coming to help you, then to return the favor, you should become someone's angel. Then there is balance. This is called samatattva, you know, balance. Martin Luther King, what did he say? He said beautifully, he said, no work is insignificant. No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. So, my dear brothers and sisters, remember, who you are makes a difference. It always does. It always does. Right? So, in closing, I'd like to say it is entirely up to you to decide which path your life takes. Which path your life takes. Who you are now is not important. Who you decide to become from today, that is important. Who you decide to become from today, that is important. May He guard you, may He guide you, and may we always be with you. That is the only prayer I can say for you. Remember, who you are makes a difference. Swamastu. Sai Ram.